How many of you are actively recruiting right now for anyone in your facility? Great, so maybe there'll be some relevance here at some point in this 30 minutes that you can bring something back to your institution or use personally. But the major take-home messages I want to share with you are this. You know, we are going to have a physician shortage. We have a provider shortage. We know we have a nursing shortage like Sherry just mentioned. We know we're projected to have physician shortages in many, if not all, specialties. It doesn't just impact emergency medicine. We are ramping up with other delivery models and other workforce innovations, and we haven't trained enough people to fill those gaps. So we are going to have issues. But it doesn't have to be difficult as long as we can think differently than we have before. We're going to have to recruit better. I'm going to talk about that in the second half of this discussion. How can we use current principles to do a better job? Because when everyone's competing for providers that are in a smaller pool, it's going to be more challenging. We have to do it better than we're doing it now. And we have to look at this workforce shortage as not necessarily being the end of the world, but as an opportunity for us to change the way we think, a way to compromise in the way we staff our departments. Compromise not in compromise in quality or compromise in efficiency or effectiveness or operations or anything along those lines, but compromise in the way we think with others who may think differently and come up with interesting strategic ways to supply our workforce. So let's get into this and discuss it a bit. Unless anyone objects. Would you object to discussing the workforce? Raise your hand. God, I thought you were going to raise your hand. You were like, no, I'm just going. If you raise your hand shoulder level, I'm cool with that. You are not interacting, and I will not say anything to you. You go above the shoulder, all bets are off, okay? All right, so the workforce projections, I've looked at a lot of different photos, and this has to be digitally enhanced. But I want to believe this exists, and I want to believe that this exists for our workforce also. But here's the picture I want to paint for you based on the literature and the data that's out there. AAMC, March 3rd, 2015, published this data. The demand has increased, will increase by 2025 up to 17%. It's continuing to do that every year. And the demand isn't just there for physicians. They're projecting that we will need in our U.S. healthcare workforce another 16,400 physician assistants. They didn't go into the details about advanced practice nurses, but they're right in there too. And we can term them together as either an advanced practice provider or advanced practice clinician, whatever you want to say. But nonetheless, collectively, we're going to need a lot more of them too. The shortage, 46,000 to 90,000 physicians by 2025. I've heard higher numbers. I've heard some lower numbers. This number has been repeated by other credible sources. I think this is a probably pretty good number, about 90,000. Primary care, interesting. Compared to non-primary care, well, it's the non-primary care specialties where we're going to lose it. We're not going to have enough people to staff those service lines. That may include emergency medicine. What's an interesting dynamic out there is the federal government and GME initiatives are pushing people to primary care. They want to push people to primary care, but because of their goal to also be budget neutral and GME slot neutral, what have they done to non-primary care? They're pushing people inadvertently away from non-primary care. I think their goal was to drive people, new people into the industry who would go into primary care, but leave non-primary care alone. That clearly is not happening. And the pendulum is going to have to swing later when we're going to need more emergency physicians, more surgeons, more neurosurgeons. I would say more neurologists, but do we need more neurologists? Maybe we do. Radiologists, we probably don't need more. They just have to work past noon and more than 3 days a week. So probably don't need more of them. We just have to restructure the workflow. I'm kidding if you know radiologists. They do great work and support what we do clinically very, very well. All right, 3,000 more per year is what we are charged with over the next 19 years. It's getting away from us very quickly. So if we want to cling to the idea that, no, we have to stop this and we need to get more physicians in the workforce, at 2025, we're going to have a collapsed healthcare system. It might be collapsed for other reasons, but it'll be at our hands for not recognizing this early. And that's what I talked to you about early on, about innovation, how we can do this differently. Here's some more data. Emergency physicians have a much higher attrition rate. So from a cohort of 100, emergency physicians age 50, only 47 are still active. At 65, 23 are still active. At 70, it's crazy. So we know that this is hard work in emergency medicine. And someone who might be, not that primary care isn't difficult too, but you have more flexibility. You can control your volume. You can close your office for a few days a week. You can change your practice. In emergency medicine, it takes its toll on the providers. There is more attrition. So as we're already understaffed, we're going to lose more people quicker than other specialties. I'm fairly certain quicker than dermatology. Dermatology is in a very good spot with the workforce, I think. I found this really cool website, and I want you to go to it if you'd like to. When I was preparing this for you, I wanted something new, something that would educate me better about the topic and about workforce. This is a free website, and I can get you the URL later if you want, but I think it's Doctor Projections, and if you just Google that, I think you'll get it. If not, I can get it for you later. But you can plug in specialty, all specialties, physician supply, and plug in the date, the projected date you want to look at, and it'll give you either a map or it'll give you a graph about what it's going to look like. We are reliant on the quality of the data that they input, but I think it's a pretty good guiding measure. And something else they came up with, a novel metric, a patient care FTE. Previously, others and large organizations have used just FTEs. How many FTEs do we need to staff a department? Whether it's emergency medicine, whether it's radiology, whether it's anesthesia, it doesn't matter what it is. How many FTEs does that department need? How many FTEs does that hospital need? Region, state, nationwide, how many physicians do we need? I like their approach. They recognize clearly that there's a lot of non-patient care work that physicians do, but they focused on patient care work alone. Patient care work alone, and this is patient care FTE. The number of hours it would take at the 95th percentile for a physician to take care of their patients, and then projected current supply. Well, this is current supply because I slid the bar over to 2016 so we can see what current supply looks like. You look at 3 of the states. The darker the states, the more supply that they have. And why do they have supply? Let's just start asking questions that the website couldn't answer. So the top 3 states with supply there, 1, 2, and 3, are New York State, California, and Texas. Well, are they oversupplied? They just have a lot of people that want to be there and they have surplus? Some of it's that. Or do they have a lot of patient care FTEs because they're taking care of a lot of patients and they're at risk for bad things happening later? Well, when you compare them, and I'll show you some additional maps coming up, to the demand that's out there and what we're projecting for the demand, for instance, New York looks very, very different than Texas, for instance. And we'll talk about that in a moment. All right, so this is current status. Current status, if you look at the white states, those are balanced. They're balanced. Hey, we have supply and demand is what we're looking at here, and they're balanced. They look pretty good based on this data and their projection tool. You start to move to tan and to red, they have demand. They need more. If you start to move into blue or really dark blue, you have a surplus. So look at New York. They've got a surplus based on their patient care FTEs, but look at Texas. They were number 3 on the list, but look, they're still underserved. And we have to recognize what the data means. You go out to 2025 so we can compare to what things may look like. We added a massive red state, and the numbers look pretty static. So actually, the number of states at baseline increased by 2, maybe 3, and the number that actually went into a higher demand, they added 2 or 3 on that end too. But the total volume of providers we're going to need has gone up. We're just talking which states will be in trouble. That may give you a good sense of where you're at, but you can play with this. And I will tell you, I plugged in emergency medicine and I plugged in overall physicians. This is where I question some of the data a little bit. Those maps look very, very similar, so I didn't give them in comparison to you here, but that might be helpful to you. I found this article, Barton and Associates, January 6, 2014. Here are the facts as they stated them, and I agree with them from 2014. So more than 10,000 people turn 65 per day. Anyone having a birthday today? No. Anyone already 65? You guys completely missed that. Okay. Anyone need to go to the restroom? Please, just go. There are others in there you can talk with. All right. All right, 33 million additional insureds by 2022, and this is what Sherry talked about. And very important, I'll reemphasize it here. Medical schools to increase enrollment 30% by 2017. Are you aware that more medical schools are opening up? Kaiser is opening up its own medical school. Has anyone heard that recently? First date of matriculation 2019. I think it's a cool idea, but what are we doing with all these graduates? Medicare-sponsored residency slots were capped in 1997. This is too expensive. Quit training all these medical school graduates. Really? Did you think that through well? I don't think they did, because in 2015, the grads exceeded the number of residency slots. What are we doing out there? These could be the most highly trained, most high-qualified Walmart greeters in the workforce. We need to find places for them. 25% of Americans live in rural America, but only 10% of physicians practice in rural America, and only 12% of emergency physicians based on ACEP and EMRA data. It's pretty impressive. Are we going to be able to force people, drive them to the underserved areas? No, we've got to get innovative with how we recruit people to those areas. 2012, 74% of healthcare organizations use locum tenens. Anyone use locums? Anyone 100% satisfied with locums? I'll give you another moment to consider it. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little more too, about how you can use locums and some of the pitfalls, but that can be a great temporary solution, but it shouldn't be permanent for you. Barb Katz is always kind enough in my role with, as medical editor-in-chief for ACEP now, to do an annual compensation survey, and I wanted to share this with you from 2014 and then compare to 2015, that if you're in some of the states that are highly compensated, that gives you leverage to recruit, and those that are in the bottom 10 states, you're going to have to look for other things. So 2014, highest compensated states, Mississippi, Texas, Wisconsin. Who's from Mississippi? Anyone in the room? You are, okay. Anyone want to move to Mississippi based on the data? You might want to. Actually, Mississippi is a nice state. Texas is up there, nice state, lots of different places to go geographically as well, and the compensation is great, and if you like cheese, you can go to Wisconsin. That's what I take away from this data. But you look at the bottom 10, number one, the worst compensated state in the U.S., Hawaii. Why is that? Does anyone know? It doesn't take long. You don't have to pay people to live on a beautiful tropical island and practice medicine. You just don't have to pay them that much. It's just whatever it takes to afford the shack on the beach. I guess that's all it takes. And Colorado, I'm a little bit surprised compensation was down there, but especially Idaho. I mean, Idaho can be a wonderful place, but in these rural areas, if you are also rural and struggling because some people maybe want more resources, and then also your compensation is not enough to then trigger them for a lifestyle change, you could be in trouble. Anyone here from Idaho? Right, way to go, Idaho. Yeah, nobody from Idaho here. But anyway, you got to think about those things. Now, in 2015, similar names, Mississippi, Texas, New Mexico joins the list on the highly compensated. And then on the bottom end, number one was D.C., Washington, D.C. I was surprised to see that. Idaho is moving up. They're moving up on the list, and then Hawaii dropped to third. So it looks like compensation compared to other states is increasing a little bit in Hawaii. It's now time to go. You waited long enough. You'll get paid a little more, and you'll get a great place to live. All right, so if you want to look regionally, things have changed in the past few years as well. It's pretty impressive, I think. It used to be that the Northeast was the lowest compensated area in the nation. This is just a couple of years ago. And now the lowest is the Northwest. I'm surprised to see that, but that's what's happened, and the highest regional income has gone away from the direct or central Southwest area like Texas, and it's moved over to the Southeast. So just to give you a sense of demographics and what's out there. So we need to have workforce innovation with our staffing. We need to drop former premises about what we think is right and good and appropriate, and let's get practical and real with this. Does anyone agree in this room that if we're going to staff an emergency department, the gold standard is residency training and board certification in emergency medicine or board eligible preparing to take your board? Well, we all agree that that's the case. I wholeheartedly have always felt that and will always feel that. But we're never going to have enough of those people to supply our workforce, and we're never going to incentivize all of them to fill the need where it is needed, which is in rural America. So if you look at the number of people out there, we just don't have enough. And actually, EMRA's data says 38% are practicing without being board certified or residency trained in emergency medicine. And that may be because of need. So we can either ignore that and say it's wrong to do that. We should just not even condone it and not think about it, or recognize that people are filling the gap. Should we fill the gap with those who are as qualified as possible to make sure that they're providing the best care possible? So those can be career emergency physicians. Residents can help us, not oral surgery residents, but maybe senior emergency medicine residents moonlighting with resources so that they're not left alone. Advanced practice providers or advanced practice clinicians. And telemedicine. I have telemedicine in two places in this presentation. It is in delivery models, but I think it's also as innovation with getting a provider in front of the patient. I think telemedicine is also a conduit to the patient. So it's also an innovation in staffing. All right, I love this article from 2014, the Journal of Rural Emergency Medicine, and I won't spend a lot of time here, but take a look at the demographics. The top map is basically emergency physician density per 100,000 population in 2008. And you can see where the holes are, the gaps are. The darker areas are the places where we have a more concentrated workforce. You drop down to the second map, and those are residency trained emergency physicians, trained in emergency medicine. You can see the difference. This data is a little dated, although the article came out in 2014. I think it holds true today. and we have some real issues. And the smaller, if you ever want to pull this article, let's share where you can get it out there. It's open access. That small, you can't see it well here, but that smaller one looks at where are the emergency departments in this country that serve less than 8,760 patients a year, which is basically one patient an hour. And where are they at? And where can we expect to have a need in rural areas? And where can we expect to try and get providers to go to places where maybe they may not feel as challenged with their skills or want more volume and that type of thing? There's a huge percentage of departments that are in that category. And a huge percentage of those are in rural America. All right, so this article also stated, based on 2003 Medicare claims data, emergency medicine board-certified physicians provide 75% of all ED care in the country, but only 48% in most rural counties. So really, rural America is where we need to focus on as a subset to this overall workforce issue. I love this article that came out about a year and a half ago as well, looking at the workforce in Iowa. Anyone from Iowa? Is there anyone that lives in the United States in this room? That's like 4 states already. I went to medical school in Iowa. I loved it, but I didn't realize this. I was amazed at this data. I thought it was different. Even though now they have one training program for emergency medicine finally in the state. 119 EDs in Iowa, staffed by emergency physicians alone, 11.8%. Wow, I thought it was going to be higher. Emergency physicians and family practice docs, 60.5%. And then FPs alone, almost a quarter, and then solo advanced practice providers, where they had some portion of their day covered only by advanced practice providers without a doc that was supervising them on site, 60%. Wow, pretty impressive. They're doing it because they need to. They have to be innovative. We have to adopt this level of thinking, and we have to make sure we do it right for our patients. Not just whoever we can get, but let's make sure the people who are there are qualified. If we need to use telesupervision to help them, we need to do what we need to, because that's the way things look now. This is also a similar demographic map for physician assistants. I can't find one for advanced practice nurses, but where they are in population density across the nation. There are some places where we don't have any advanced practice providers. I mean, you take a look at this too. Well, the Great Lakes, I mean, there's no one swimming out there. Those are white areas. But the other states that are white, there are no PAs out there. But you can get a sense of where people are at. And what this tells me, and I hope it tells you the same thing, we can't send all of our PAs to rural America to fill the gaps. The same situation exists with them that does with physician colleagues. They don't all want to go there. They have to make a lifestyle choice. So we are not only utilizing them to help in rural areas, but we're also utilizing those in very, very population-dense areas where the volumes and the acuity are so high that we can't physically do it we don't have enough physicians to do it. So even look, New York and the Northeast Corridor there, lots of PAs there. All right, so alternative delivery models. We got to think about this. Urgent care centers. Freestanding EDs. I know that that's a politically sensitive topic, but we need to think about innovative ways to deliver care. Retail clinics. I got my flu shot at CVS this year. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to support this. But you know what? I went to the kiosk, I plugged in some info, and then they said, you can have your flu shot. And my kids were in town from school and everything, so everybody got them at once. And they said, oh, well, this is just covered under your plan because we're linked with your plan, and it's free today. I have to admit, it was freaking easy. It really was. And then I shopped. So it was so easy. All right, telemedicine. We got to think about ways to do telemedicine. And I don't want you to read this. I want you to have this data for you in your syllabus. But there were 3 points I want to send you away with that are current topics in telemedicine. The first is, what are we doing to make this easier? Right now, licensure is a big barrier to using telemedicine. Well, there is the Telemedicine for Medicare Act of 2015. A lot of states have signed on to it, but interesting, the holdouts are the AMA and the Federation State Medical Boards. Why? Because they know that if they allow cross state lines intervention, then those state medical boards will no longer be able to intervene from a quality standpoint or a safety standpoint. So what I'm saying is, if the patient is in Rhode Island and the doc is licensed in Texas, Rhode Island can't do anything to the doc in Texas if they're practicing poorly. That's what's holding this up a little bit. All right, and then from the AMA newsroom, October 8th, 2015, this came out too, and this is an initiative pushed by Steve Stack, our AMA president and emergency physician, that they have convened a panel. This panel is going to make sure that we develop the right codes so that we get paid properly for telemedicine. So that's a new innovation there too. And look at the way the market is using this. So if you look at this company, American Well Corporation, they've got telemedicine services available. They partnered with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, at least in a couple different states already, to say, you know what, we're going to put telemedicine out there retail for $49 a visit, But if you join us, your insureds will get it for $39 a visit. This is the dynamic that's happening out there. We can't ignore it, and we have to embrace it. We have to partner a bit and figure out how we can participate, or we will be left on the sideline. All right, some recruitment challenges, and we'll end in about 10 minutes here, and I won't take up any more of your time. Not until later, so I get to do it again. All right, so recruitment challenges. Interesting. When you look at this, 80% of employee turnover is a result of bad hiring. Has anyone, you don't have to raise your hand here. Have you known anyone who wishes that they hadn't hired somebody in the past? It's like, yeah, exactly. All right. It happens a lot. And why do companies hire bad employees? Well, the most common is 38% of the time because they were pressured because they needed a vacancy filled right away. It doesn't help you to fill it with the wrong people. I looked at some large organizations out there that do a lot of recruiting as well as physician groups, and this is what's going on out there with average days open in a position. And it's pretty impressive. So in 2012, about 104 days, it kind of went down a little bit, ramped up, but the most important change from 2012 to 2015, the days open to fill a position are 151. And that's in our current industry in healthcare recruiting. That's fascinating to me because that means it's getting harder to get people into positions. And then we got to start credentialing them and everything else, which is really a nightmare also. All right, so the process. Let's spend our last amount of time together. I'm feeling a little sad. It's not that much time. But let's talk about the process. This is more about the process we currently use than developing new processes. But how can we use this better to our advantage, knowing that this is going to be a more competitive market? And how can we do a better job for the people that we're recruiting? We want to recruit the right people for the right spots and not just have a revolving door and having people come in and out, increasing organizational expense. We don't want to do that. So recruitment process is the beginning of the relationship between the employer and the employee. So this is when you should bond with that person through recruitment, not after they've signed. This establishes the basis for employer and employee expectations. If you want to look up a concept on this, the psychological contract is very important. This is where it begins. The unmentioned expectation of reciprocation. And I tell you what, when expectations are different than an employee's experience, they leave. And if you look at the data out there, most physicians leave at year 2. And so you need to have a good program in place to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. The critical piece and principal stakeholder, if you're staffing an emergency department, is the medical director, because if you're always trying to staff and work on your schedules, you will never be able to accomplish anything more important. All right, so a couple other concepts here. Salesmanship is important, but you don't want to deceive anyone. Getting the wrong people there doesn't help. And if you develop a great mission and vision and sell that to your recruits, then they will want to be a part of something bigger. Not necessarily a nice physical plant, that helps, but that's window dressing. They want to work for you, they want to be inspired, they want to do something important. And that can be in the worst physical plant ever. But if you have a plan and they feel like an important piece of that plan, that's what's important. You just don't want to be this guy. I can see that, you have potential. I would love to have you in our department. I've seen those discussions. And yes, it's like a Pinocchio discussion. It's bad. You should establish and follow your recruitment checklist. If you don't have one, develop one. Here's one I can share with you. I think it may be in your syllabus. If not, I can send it to you if you want to email me. This is also available open access. This was developed by over 5 state medical societies about a 365-day plan about what you should be doing to manage your recruitment process. So other considerations, you should develop a checklist for candidate screening. What do you want in those candidates? And maybe have a scoring system so it can be more objective. Develop an interview checklist. Here are all the things we want to do pre-interview. Here's what we're going to do post-interview, and make sure we're doing all the things we should. When should we reach out to them? How do we handle all these communications? Assess your human resources needs. Who do you need there? So I'll read, since you didn't read it clearly, at McDonald's, hiring smiley faces for afternoon shits. If that's what you're looking for, if you need people for the afternoon shit service, that's what you need. It's obviously, we're hiring low-level employees working on this, or employees with great senses of humor, that's for sure. But my point here is, you've got to know what your human resources needs are before you can really start recruiting. Assess volume trends and operational performance. Do you need more? Do you need less? Assess your current staffing schedule requirements. Is somebody wanting to cut down? Is someone going to be leaving? Provider satisfaction. Is someone on the edge that you don't think you can pull back? What about performance? Are you going to have to make a difficult decision and have a crucial conversation? Maybe you will. And assess the hospital's expectations for staffing. Maybe the hospital, maybe they would say, we think you're understaffed, you need to recruit 2 more FTEs. Well, you can negotiate that, and maybe you agree and you'll do that, but you need to know that information. And I would always ask you to subscribe to the +1 theory. If you're fully staffed, I would still recruit. So you're still recruiting and you don't fall off your game. You've got to stay in the recruitment game. And if you find somebody who's great and you're fully staffed, I would hire them. And if your work hours among your workforce have to be diluted temporarily, they'll tolerate that well. Too many hours they won't, but diluting the hours for a while they will. And this is a message to everyone that you're hiring based on performance and what people can do, and that'll help everybody to perform better. You're not trying to replace anybody or move anybody out, but this is putting everyone on notice that longevity is important, but you're going to bring the right people in to bring your vision to fruition down the road. All right, and speaking of vision and mission, I won't say a lot here, but a mission is what you're designed to do. We deliver health care. We provide emergency services, whatever it is. It's not sexy. That's what you are here to do. But the vision statement is what you aspire to be. What can this department be? What can this EMS service be? What can this hospital be to the community, to the region, to the nation? You may never get there, but the journey is going to be exciting and you're going to accomplish a lot of great things trying to get there. So very, very important. All right, so recruiting strategies. So steps, you need to really source your candidates nationwide and have a way to do that. And I tell you, if you look at some of these search firms, when you take a look at their data, 75% of physicians placed by this particular one, SageGuy, I think they pronounce it that way, they were touched in 2015 by some sort of social media. The best plan that you can have, quite honestly, is to use LinkedIn. And I love Liam Neeson, so it's really, you can find someone. You can find someone on LinkedIn. You may not know them, but they have a unique set of skills, and you will seek them out. And you can hire them. You can also monitor the performance or interest level that your people have on LinkedIn and identify those that seem to have activity that tells you they might be ready to leave. You'd be amazed that when you see if they're really publishing a lot of information out there like, does anyone have a really good job? I'm ready to jump. If something, you can pick up on this very subtle stuff. You really can. All right, so social media is really important. Here are some other steps: screening, pre-interview, interview, and closing the deal. And after this discussion, we'll close and you'll get to go to your break. So you need a non-physician contact to screen those individuals so you're looking at the right CVs. You can use locums, but remember, if you hire a locums doc, oftentimes there is a fee associated with hiring them away from the locums organization, and locums docs can be great. Some choose locums for a variety of really good reasons, and I won't say more about this except that sometimes locums chooses them. If locums has chosen them and they're only at one place once, for a month or 2 weeks and they're on to another place and it's been that way for 5 or 10 years, there may be a reason why they aren't a good long-term fit for you. So square peg in a round hole, you don't want that. Hermie was a great guy. He was going to be a great dentist. But if you're not looking for Hermie, you're not looking for a dentist, you have to have that conversation. Don't hire somebody who's not willing to do the kind of work and the job you want done. So pre-interview, I think the medical director, whoever's in charge of recruiting, needs to talk to people, sell the vision, let them know what the vision is, and see if they're a really good fit. Sometimes you know right away it's not a good fit. By the way, some people should never wear spandex too. That's the other side message here. That's one of them. Establish the fit, the goals, structure the interview if you like them, and see how that's going to work for you. In short, if you look at the business literature, it translates to healthcare as well. You're going to have to interview about 5+ people, and that's going to cost about $6,000 a person on the average. It's going to cost you about $30,000, $31,000 to hire somebody. I looked at some data as recently as last week, and some people are reporting to hire one nurse, it's costing $88,000. So there's numbers across a large continuum, but it costs a lot to hire somebody, so don't waste your time. So you're going to interview somebody, you want to confirm the fit. You want to identify any potential issues. Don't avoid the tough questions. How long can you stay here? Because I know that your life partner has a hand fellowship going on right now. No, we want to live in this community the rest of our lives. Great. Or no, we're going to go back to the West Coast where she or he is from. You need to know that. So make sure you do that. The itinerary is important. Hand them an itinerary so they know that you've thought about it and you have a good plan for their interview. Closing the deal. The most important thing, remember, this isn't speed dating. If that's where your experience in interviewing comes from and you treat it that way, like you drop somebody off at the airport after the interview, it's like, well, hey, you know what, I'll probably call you. Well, when will you call? Listen, I'll get back to you. We had a good lunch and it was a good interview, but I'm not ready to commit yet. I need to interview a few more people. If you handle it that way, you're going to lose people to competitors. I'd have a contract in hand, be positive, and when you're ready to ask them to commit, cue up the wants and needs from the interview. This is what you needed. This is what we tried to do. You are a part of my vision. I really want you to be here. And hand them a contract to sign or at least to review so that they know you're serious. You got to have it available. All right, negotiating the deal. I won't go through these in detail. They're there for your reference. But you've got to make sure that there are some ground rules established on the front end so that people understand there are certain things that are off the table with the negotiation. All right, avoid compliance issues. A couple comments. These areas are noting protected classes. You can't ask certain questions. So age-related questions. You can't say, do you need certain things to function in our department, like a certain size it depends. You can't ask a sort of question. Religion. So we have a group of Jewish physicians who have a great work ethic. We're looking for a Christian physician to fill in the Jewish holidays, who also has a good work ethic. Can you do it? Can you be that person? You can't do that. If they bring up the conversation, you can. You can't bring up any of these things. Gender, if you have to ask, don't ask. What color scrubs do you want? You want blue or do you want pink? Yellow. You won't get anywhere with that. So make sure that you have a retention checklist. Don't manage your department by forcing people to do things, by getting them to be a captive audience by buying a house. Make sure that they want to be with you because you're working really hard to retain them. You should have a retention plan that goes out to about year 3 to make sure they're happy. And make sure you understand, too, physicians are not pulled from their jobs, they're pushed from them. You can get mad when you feel that someone's been pulled away from you, but there's a pretty good chance that maybe you didn't manage that relationship as well as you could have, and you didn't retain them. So very, very important. Here's another good reference for you for some strategies for retention and some common recruitment errors that I'll go through that have actually happened. And if you want the details, I'll share them with you at break or later today or tomorrow. Not showing up for the interview after you scheduled it, taking calls or checking your iPhone during an interview, working a shift the day of the interview, that's kind of double dipping, not introducing candidates to the leadership, they're not important enough, interviewing candidates you don't intend to hire, shopping around for the better candidate and you lose the one in front of you, slow response to candidates. A difficult application process and the compensation is too complex to explain to them. If it's too complex, you need to change it. Offering people special deals, trying to recruit after you quit. I've had that happen. Well, how long have you been here? Well, I've been here 3 years. I'm leaving next month, but you're going to love it here. I mean, you can't sell it that way. Not including a social function, not including others from the group, double booking, you can't interview 2 people at the same time, not including their significant other and their family, and don't overpromise and underdeliver. That is a real, real issue. Top-down management is bad. You have to identify viral dysfunction and pour some administrative Tamiflu on that as quickly as you can so someone doesn't poison the well with your workforce and undermine your credibility. You can't do it. You can't manage everyone the same way. You can't manage through friendship. You can make friends through your leadership position, but if your management style is, I'm going to befriend everyone so they'll like me so much, they'll just want to do what I say, you will get taken advantage of. That's for sure. Accepting poor performance. If your performance expectation is here and you tolerate someone performing here, we all become the short corgi. And the bar comes down here and all of your other people in the department say, I'm just going to perform down here. That's apparently your expectation. So here are some closing thoughts. I polled about 500 medical directors nationally, and I consolidated these because there are a lot of repeat responses. Here's what they said. Thoughts and considerations with recruitment in a physician shortage. Using same docs for multiple sites, particularly a lower volume site. Partnering with a local fellowship program. Fellowship to train people more about emergency medicine, but also advanced fellowship, so if they're not fully out of their training program yet, they can moonlight. Diverse training backgrounds, we have to expand our consideration of that. Senior EM residents for supplementation, $150,000 for 3 years in underserved areas. That's a lot of money, but if you want to get people there, it might be what's necessary. That's being done. Low volume equals low pay. They said that was a concern. If it's a low volume place, then you can't pay them enough to get them there. Maybe the hospital can consider a subsidy. Working environment. You've got to sell working environment in rural America. You can use locums and part-time, partnering with residency programs and letting them know what the lifestyle decision they're going to make is important and why rural or semi-rural America might be a really good one. Loan repayment, scheduling innovation, do neat things for them that make it work better for them that they can't get elsewhere. APC or APP internship is extra. I love this. You put them in the department as an extra provider, pay them a lower wage, and when they've put 200 hours in a basically on-the-job training, then they're good to go, and hopefully they'll stay with you. Do not require geographic proximity. You have to live in our community of 5 people to work. I mean, it's not going to work. You can't do it. I've seen it fail many times. And consider using a referral program. Someone refers someone to you that you hire, then maybe you should compensate them. I appreciate your time and attention and your patience. I'm looking forward to talking to you this afternoon.